welcome to my talk, Unboxing Cloud, how we organize continuity and security in the BlueSpice Cloud. My name is Markus Glaser. I am the co-owner of Hallo Welt, the company behind BlueSpice, and I mainly focus on technology here, so that's my responsibility, which also means, of course, I'm ultimately responsible for running the cloud at Hallo Welt. That, by the way, is some interesting transition we are currently going through, because traditionally Hallo Welt is a software development company. So what we do is we develop software. Of course, we help our customers deploy the software. But then when it comes to running the software, we are out of the game. And like all the everyday operations, maintaining the servers, running the software, ensure that there's no data loss. That is basically up to a few years ago, that was up to our customers or the people who ran the software. Of course, we did offer some services to a certain extent, but now when we decided to provide a cloud service, this has definitely changed. Now we are officially like an operator, and it's our task to ensure that the cloud services are on time, and your data is protected, and there is no data loss. And that was a journey for us as well. We had to learn how to do this. What I want to show you today is just basically a few insights on how we ensure reliability, scalability, and especially continuity and security in our cloud. This may also be a bit boring, so there is nothing that is like super clever, fancy solutions. Basically, what we do is what all other companies also do that run the cloud. But still, I think it's interesting to share this. Maybe others can see how we do it. Also, you as customers can rest assured that we take the appropriate measures to take care of your data, to take care of your systems. So I think that would be cool. I'm sorry about the sound quality. I don't have a different headset. Let me just try something. Maybe I can help here. Just a second. Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better now? No, wait, you can't.
So I think there's a difference to before, but from my perspective, it's not that bad. Perhaps it costs you with the headset.
Yeah, okay. I try to do my best and speak a little bit louder and slower, and then hope that helps. Okay, so what I'm going to talk you through is how we do our backups, what measures we take to ensure security, what measures we take to ensure continuity of service, and then a little bit on this disaster recovery and disaster prevention. Let's just jump right into the topics. So backup, how do we back up and what is the purpose? So the purpose of our backup mechanism is to ensure general operability. So basically, the single purpose of the backup we're talking about for now is to make sure that no data is lost in a case of like any disaster, right? So if we have data center outages, you remember that case where there was a data center burning in southern France, and we need to protect our data against that. Also, of course, service outages, or in case of malicious interference, like spam or hacker attacks that might mess with the data, we need to be able to recover older versions of the data. What the backup is about is to recover whole instances or the whole system, not individual files. So this is not a backup where you can say, okay, I need that article from 2 days ago. Can you please give it to me? That is hard to do. It is more like my wiki got lost. It's down, or basically in Hallo Welt, we do have a disaster of some kind, and we need to be able to get your data back as a whole on an instance. And that's also the reason why Hallo Welt is the one who runs these backups and manages these backups. So there is no individual access on these. How do we do it? We follow a schedule. So that is all data. That is database files configuration is backed up every hour. So every hour there's a backup job running. All backups are run automatically. Of course, I guess that's normal. Also in the same interval, we back up all the infrastructure data, all the data that is used to run the infrastructure. So we can spin up the whole infrastructure from this data in case of like a total disaster. What we do is we keep the last 4 hours. We keep also the last 7 days, and we keep the last 3 months. The 3 months, that's really in case of data corruption. So that we were thinking about this a little bit. And the question is always like, when do we notice things? Or when does a customer notice things? So for example, if you get, say, a malicious actor on your wiki, a spammer, then that is very unlikely in the cloud, though, because we don't allow public or self-registration there. But let's assume somebody managed to sneak in and that person gradually and slowly corrupts your data. They can do it in a way that is really hard to manually recover, and I don't know. A vandal uses a bot that creates tens of thousands of pages. Then in that case, we need to go back until that situation started. We said, okay, 7 days, that would probably be a good notice. So that's the main thing, 4 hours, 7 days. And the 3 months are just for like super disaster scenarios. Okay, all backups are created automatically. That's what we keep. So where do we store the backups? We store them in 2 physical locations. One backup is stored at the same place where our cloud is, so we can have fast access, we can recover fastly. But then there is also a backup, which is located in a different data center that is like a few hundred kilometers away. So even if there's a physical issue in one of the data centers, we can ensure that the data is protected and safe. We sync those 2 on a daily basis. the data center 2 is basically the one that is responsible for the daily backups, whereas the data center 1 is responsible for the hourly backups. Backups are stored in an encrypted way, and we use a software for this. So that is an open source software, which is pretty widespread. And it ensures that the data, the backup is consistent and doesn't have any like synchronization errors and things like that. And we can manage all the retention policies very easily using that manager. In case of disaster, we can restore those backups. We can also restore backups for one wiki only, so it's not that we have to reset the whole cloud. And we can do that on demand. So if, for example, we have that given scenario that you notice that in your cloud instance there is something wrong, you can approach us. We can set it back to like -4 hours or -1 day or -1 hour. That is possible. Restoration is not done fully automatically, it's semi-scripted. So we have individual steps which are scripted, but we need to understand what is the reason why we need to implement that or restore a certain backup. And maybe we need to do additional checks or things that like are in the middle of the process. So that is why restoring a backup is not fully, it's not pressing one button, but it's like running a set of scripts. The restoration takes about 15 minutes to do. That's because for efficiency reasons, we do not back up secondary data. Secondary data is things like the search index. So the search index, when you search in your wiki, that is done by Elasticsearch, and Elasticsearch uses some sort of a copy, an indexed copy of the data that is in your system, and it munches it in a way that it can do fast access for search. So this data is what we call secondary because it can be derived, it can be recreated from primary data, that is the data you have in your wiki, that is the articles. Now, in a disaster recovery scenario, what we have to do is we have to recreate that kind of secondary data. And that takes about 15 minutes. It depends a little bit on your data, on the amount of data and on the type of data, but roughly that's the time you have to consider. I have talked about these disaster recovery backups, which ensure continuity, which ensure the security of your data. Now, and I said that is only available for Hallo Welt, and we manage that. If you don't trust us so much, then on request, we can provide you with a daily backup. That's just a brand new option we have. And I think there are some extra costs involved, to be honest, but I don't know for sure. You have to contact sales for this. In that scenario, you will get access to a Nextcloud file store, and we will deliver a specially prepared backup file for you, which you can download from there and can stow it away as you wish. So that is basically the touch point, is Nextcloud store. We give you the data and you can download it from there. Of course, that's password protected, and only one user does have access to that backup. Another question you might have is how long do we retain data, or what happens with the backups and the data once you terminate your contract, which I hope you don't do, obviously, but of course that's part of the game. In order to prevent a data loss, a fast data loss, it's not possible in our cloud to directly delete an instance. But we have a two-step process. That is, in the first step, we archive the instance, and it is still part of the backup process. And archiving means we just take down the instance, we take it offline, but the data is still there. It is put in a special place, which we call the archive, and it sits there until the second step is executed, and that is the actual deletion of the data. As per policy, we delete the data 4 weeks after archiving of the archiving step. We can do it earlier upon request. So if you wish us to really completely remove the data now, then you can ask us and we just execute that deletion step earlier. When we do that, then also the data in the backups is gone. So there's no trace of your data anymore. And obviously it's not recoverable. So that's why we put like a retention period in front of this, because maybe you just realize that there was something in there which you need. If you are a customer of our evaluation wikis, that is the like the testing systems we provide to potential customers, then retention period is 1 week instead of 4 weeks. So after 1 week, we completely get rid of all the data we have stored from you. Do you have any questions regarding backups? Okay, then maybe let's jump to the next major topic, that's security. Okay, so how do we protect your data from tampering, from somebody tampering? I mean, we talked about the backups, which are meant to be safe in a disaster scenario. Now, we also need to protect your data from like hacker attacks, from tampering. And of course, we do have a lot of measures in place. So this is not an exhaustive list. I just wanted to highlight a few of them so you know and you understand how this works. Okay, so there's 2 types of access which Hallo Welt staff has to the systems in the cloud. One type of access is the infrastructure. If we do have some operators here, it's actually 3 people who can do that, who basically do have access to the basement of the cloud, right? So in the basement, you have kind of all access. You can do anything. So how do we prevent misuse? Well, first of all, of course, we only give access to highly trustworthy people here at Hallo Welt, which we also legally bind to extra contractual clauses and stuff like that. The access is the access is managed centrally. It's not that anyone can just say, hey, I want access, and somebody else gives it to him, but we do have a access policy, and that requires at least one C-level person to be involved, and to make sure that this access is not given away to people which we don't think should access the data. Also, even when you're in the basement, it's not like, hey, I go there and I access the data. You still have to do, you have to jump a few hurdles. On the other hand, we need that access to your system since we are responsible for the operations of the cloud, or we need to ensure that things work properly. What we don't have as, like, set aside those 3 people currently. Nobody else does have access to your instance data, and it's not possible. So we do not have access to your instance normally, and even the people who are responsible for managing your instance, like adding, changing the user limit, or even spinning up a new instance, they do not have access to your data. We do that intentionally. So if you might see that if you post a support request with us and we need to see your data, we will ask you if you can provide us with a password or if it's okay for you that we enter the instance. And if we do so, this of course is logged somewhere, so it can be traced. Okay. The other thing is, how do we encrypt data? Yes, we encrypt data at rest. That means the data that is stored on a disk, as long as it is not in use. We do encrypt data in transit, so all traffic is done via secure layers. But with the wiki, what we cannot do, and we got that question sometimes, we cannot encrypt data in action. So if the data is being processed by the system, then it's impossible to have an encrypted data. So that is just basically state of the art for a lot of systems. But just to be clear here, so data at rest is encrypted, data in transit is encrypted, data in action, once it's processed on a single machine, it is not possible to encrypt data here. Operational, I guess there's also some standards here. So all external traffic which goes to the cloud is terminated in a load balancer, and the load balancer then decides whether a certain machine can access, or a certain person can access a machine or not. And we are, of course, very restrictive about that. Access to these machines is regulated by several layers of firewalls. So there's external firewall, but also internal firewalls that allow us to fine-grain which machines can have access to which other machines, and who can basically talk to each other. And on top of that, also that state of the art, we use various network layers for different purposes. So for example, one instance consists of 2 or 3 Dockers, and they communicate with each other using a specific network, so only they can talk to each other. Whereas if you go up one level, then we have a different layer of networks. All operations and instances are logged. I just put out a screenshot of a testing system which we use. So you can see what instance operations were done, and what was the state, what were the parameters, who initiated it. So all operations are logged, and people can actually, we can be transparent about what happened on your instance. That's also part of security. So transparency is one of the important things here. When it comes to development, then we also care about security, of course. So in development phase, when we say we recreate the Docker container because we changed some infrastructure workings, or of course during the development of BlueSpice as a whole, what we do is we do automated security checks. You see here one system which we use that is very widespread. It's called Trivi, that basically takes a list of common vulnerabilities, checks if the components we use in the Docker container do have these vulnerabilities, and if so, it raises a flag telling us that there is some issue here. Same is true for BlueSpice code. So also in the BlueSpice code, we use a set of third-party libraries, and those are checked using automated scripts on a daily basis. So also here, if some library turns out to have a vulnerability, then we will get, you can see it on the screenshot here, so the component security check will then turn red, and then we will see that there's something wrong, and we will immediately take action and push a new version and try to mitigate that issue. And of course, last but not least, we follow strict code reviews, so no code can enter the product without being reviewed and without being tested, using a few testing mechanisms here. Here's just a quick excursus. So how do we handle vulnerabilities? That's not strictly cloud related. It's more related to BlueSpice, but I think it's noteworthy. So Hallo Welt is participating in the CVE program. So that's a common vulnerability database, which you probably have seen when you are in the security area. They have certain format of numbers, and they do number all vulnerabilities, that information is stored in a central database, so you can search for it. You can also search for, say, vulnerabilities of BlueSpice or of BlueSpice in a specific version. Now, in order to be part of the program, we had to become a CNA, which means CVE numbering authority. So we can request our own CVE numbers, and we can manage our own CVE disclosures here. That's an interesting process because it's not that we as a vendor just say, okay, we do have a vulnerability and we think it's like this, but there's also a peer review process here. So we propose a CVE number, and then this and the description and the assessment of the severity, that is also peer reviewed by partners from this CVE program. So it's double checked. You can be sure that there is at least a few security experts who took a look at this. We maintain, as part of being a CNA, we have to, and we also want to maintain a list of security advisories. So that is known security issues with older versions, which I have linked here, and there's a screenshot down here, so you can basically see what kind of vulnerabilities we have. Obviously, part of the policy is we do not publish CVE numbers without providing a fix. So if we get to know of a security issue, we then assess this, we try to mitigate the problem, we create a fix, which we publish, and at the same time, we also disclose it and publish that CVE number. That is based on also a publicly available disclosure policy, which is linked here, where you can see how you can also talk to us when you find a security issue, and how we deal with it, and what is the process here. Second excursus here, GDPR. So as part of security, and I subsume also data protection here a little bit, that is, there are touch points here. So how do we deal with GDPR related issues in that respect? Hallo Welt is very strict about not giving away data to some insecure parties. So what we do is when we work with third-party providers, like in the case of cloud, the cloud that's Hetzner, which is our data center provider, then we go through a due diligence process with them. We assess, do they comply with the GDPR? Can we safely store our data there? And to make things easier, we focus solely on European-based providers because they are easier to handle with regards to GDPR. So just as a side notice. Any questions so far? Okay, doesn't look like it. If so, just paste in the chat. Okay, continuity. That's the second aspect, and I'm already very deep in my talk, I see. Continuity is basically to ensure that disaster does not strike us. That's before disaster happens. With the backup, we took a lot of, what happens if, what can we do? How can we ensure your data when there is a disaster? But let's just see what we do to prevent that. Of course, first thing is you need to know what happens in your cloud. So we do a continuous monitoring. We get alerted when things get beyond certain thresholds. So if there's like low disk space, then a few people here in Hallo Welt get emails and there's an alarm raised. So that's what we monitor continuously. Also, we monitor performance on one reference system in the production cloud. So I have placed one instance in the cloud, which like we ping every few minutes and then see, does it respond in time or do we see any degradation here? Same is true for functional tests. So once per day, we run an automated test, also in one of those reference systems where we test a wide range of functionality and see if that does work. So we will basically see if there's any service outages if we don't realize earlier. And also our service status is published. So you can go to http://status.bluespice.com and that is where you see what the current state of like our systems is, the systems we provide or we expose to you as a customer. Of course, very important, we do have 3 almost identical systems to run the cloud. The one obviously is the production system. That is where like your instances live. We do have an identical system that we call QA for quality assurance, where we pre-test anything that goes into production. So that's a policy. No changes go to production before they went to, unless they went through the QA beforehand. So we can pretty much make sure the changes we apply and the way we apply them will not disrupt the services, or if there's any maintenance window necessary, then we can announce it, which we also do on the status page. And of course, there's a development system, which also is almost identical, at least in architecture, which is the one we do, like, we can operate on more freely and do things. Okay, technical measures for Cloud Swarm, just to be quick here. So we have a setup that is self-healing, which means it, if a service is down, the Swarm attempts to restart it and see if that mitigates the issue. And of course, as in the cloud, we do have a lot of redundancy all over the place. I guess one of the building blocks for ensuring continuity is heavy standardization. So we do not, on purpose, we do not allow any customizations in the cloud. The cloud is all product, it is all standard. The product you get in the cloud is a standard product and each instance is the same. So that's very important for us because then we can do all the operations that are needed. We can pre-test them on instances and we can just execute them exactly the same in all other instances and we know it works. And in order to do that on a safe and secure way, all operations are scripted and reproducible. We use several layers of like middleware in between. And all these operations are done through a management interface where like this operation is exposed. So if it's exposed, it's possible. If it's not exposed, then we need to go through a process where we pre-test and see that it works properly on all instances. I guess the last building block on ensuring continuity is ensuring that there is a lot of people, or enough people, not a lot, enough people who know how to operate the cloud and how the cloud is built. That is something we had to learn. For parts of the cloud, we initially relied too much on single experts to know what happens in this specific part, and it turned out to be not the best solution because you have like volatility in your personnel. So people come, people go. And of course, if people go that are experts, then you have to recreate that knowledge. So now we shifted strategy here, and we have a rather strict policy that all the personal skills we need for single persons are held redundantly. At least two people always know how to operate like one single piece of the cloud. All changes we do in the production cloud need to be peer reviewed. So we take that from code development, where we already have implemented that process, and we put it to operations as well. So everything that is being done in the cloud, any changes, as I said, they are typically scripted. So these scripts are peer reviewed by somebody else who is equally knowledgeable. Of course, critical operations, they are done in team sessions. So that's not that a single operator is sweating heavily and is with a scary face sitting in front of the computer, but it's at least two operators looking scared and sweating heavily in front of a computer, but it's at least a team. It turned out that this is really good because 4 eyes or maybe 6 eyes sometimes see more, can better assess the effects of a change. And good news is we will increase our team, our cloud team by July, so we do have even more stability here. And of course, we are a wiki company, so a big part of continuity is to document things, and we eat our own dog food here, so we use our wiki to write the so-called cloud operations manual, not handbook. This is where we document the cloud architecture, we document all operations, and of course, we continue to document our learnings there. Okay, last point, disaster recovery, which is just adding to that. So the disaster recovery plan, of course, is written. We do have a manual or part of the Cloud Operations Handbook where we store data on how to restore services, which is continuously updated because we do test recoveries. So in the QA system, we intentionally triggered or disabled some services. We checked how the system reacts and how we can bring that service back. And that, of course, went into documentation, so now we know it. And of course, to be honest, not all of these tests were intentional. Some of the tests we did involuntarily by just breaking something in the dev QA system. That is how we also learn, of course. By documenting this, we know how to restart these services, how to recreate them. And we also have proven, or we did a recreation of the whole swarm. So we have proven that we can do it, internally proven that what I mean. We have actually done it. And we know now that we can recreate it. So it's not only documentation and somebody thinking, how can we do it? But we actually executed that plan and it worked. So we're pretty safe there. That's the end of my talk about continuity and security. If you do have any questions about that, you can ask them now. There's still a bit of time, or you get in touch with my team or with me directly. and I will be happy to get into more details on where it's possible. Thank you.